about to start. Yes. Okay. Welcome. I'm going to call this. Who's that? Um, Today we are going to be interviewing. You want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Ryan Richardson. I'm a candidate in Oakland for Oakland City Attorney. I'll be on the November ballot.
Beautiful. Just to start it off, I know you only have so much time, so we're going to have a cold open asking you about your campaign. Who are you, and what makes you want to run for office?
Okay. Uh, well, again, my name's Ryan. I've been well. First, I'll tell you a little bit about what the office is, what the city attorney's office does, because a lot of people don't know, and it's not surprising because if we're doing our job well, we're kind of behind the scenes supporting your other elected leaders, your mayor and your city council. But what we do, we're the in-house law office for the city of Oakland. So if you thought of the city as a corporation, the mayor would be the CEO, the city council would be the board, the residents of Oakland would be the shareholders, and our office we're the in-house counsel. So we're the general counsel for the city. We give advice, we defend lawsuits, and we have a small team of attorneys. I want to grow it, but we have a small team of attorneys that can actually go out and file lawsuits on behalf of Oaklanders if somebody's come in and polluted our streets, who has been an abusive landlord, or has illegally dumped, or those types of things. So that's essentially what our office does. I've been working there for 11 years, which is about half of my career. So I've been practicing law for 22 years. And I'm running because I just love this work. I kind of have found my home in the city attorney's office. My boss, Barbara Parker, has been the city attorney for the last 13 years, and she's retiring. So I want to keep the office kind of moving in the right direction. There's things we want to do to improve it, but I want to make sure that we maintain the culture and the legacy that we've built for decades.
I love that.
Yeah.
So, can I ask, like, what is it that made you want to get into this role as opposed to being an attorney at a firm or something like that?
Well, so I was an attorney at a firm when I got out of law school. I was the first person in my family to go to law school. I didn't know any lawyers going into law school, and I didn't really appreciate that just because you've chosen to practice law, you haven't actually chosen a career yet, because there's anything from a bankruptcy attorney to somebody who represents children in the foster care system to a tax attorney. Those are completely different jobs.
Right.
And so I knew I wanted to be a lawyer, but I didn't know enough to know what kind of lawyer I wanted to be. So I actually did work at a firm for 3 years, and I learned a lot. I got paid really well, but I wasn't fulfilled. I wasn't enjoying what I was doing. We were always representing corporations fighting over money. Is essentially what it boiled down to, and it just wasn't for me. So I left that practice, and I started my own law practice with a partner at first, and we eventually ended up representing workers in harassment and discrimination cases. And that felt a lot better, and I did that for 7 years. And then when I met my wife, we were down in Los Angeles, and we wanted to move back up here to be near to her family when we were getting ready to have our own family, and decided I could take kind of my public service to another level and just work directly in public service.
That makes sense. So you have a family here in Oakland. You are someone who has a stake in the city of Oakland because of that. Would you say that your office, are you the city's attorney, or are you the attorney for people of the city? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, are you representing, like, if I have a problem with the city, are you going to say, hey, sorry, I have to defend the city? Or are you representing maybe me as a constituent, or maybe both?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. So if somebody has a problem with, say, a neighbor who's violating all sorts of code ordinances and creating a nuisance on their street, or again, a landlord who's systematically mistreating tenants, or those types of things, those are situations. We also and workers' rights too. So if we have employers in the city who aren't paying Oakland's minimum wage, or who aren't abiding by our sick leave requirements, our local sick leave requirements, those are instances where the city attorney's office actually can go in and file a lawsuit against those bad actors directly on behalf of Oaklanders. Um, Other times we'd be advising council members. So I would say in those cases, we're still in a sense representing Oaklanders, but indirectly, right? So you
Okay.
will have sent somebody to City Hall with a mandate. You will have sent a mayor or city council member, and you will have let them know this is what we want you to work on. This is what we expect you to do, and they're representing you, right? Representative democracy, and our job is then to support them in what you've sent them to City Hall to do. So I would say, whether it's directly or indirectly, we're always representing the people of Oakland.
Hmm. I
Yeah.
like that. Good answer.
Yeah.
Thank you. Can you tell me just? Oh, actually, before we keep going, I just want to calm my nerves and make sure. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Um. Okay. So, my next question for you is, how will you work on your messaging in your campaign? How do you communicate with your potential constituents? Like, are you on social media a lot? Are you getting out into the community? I met you in the community, so yeah. Can you talk a little bit? Ooh, excuse me.
Yeah. So this is my first campaign, and so it's a learning experience. It's been an interesting one. The method of communication I enjoy the most is actually going out and talking to people directly. Um, and and I think probably after that, the more opportunities I have like this, where I can talk to somebody, but the message can be shared with other folks, I think is also probably the next best thing, because I'm not going to be able to meet every single voter in Oakland.
Right,
but
right.
but I think, in terms of what we're trying to do, is what we want to do is be as honest with the voters as we can. I mean, this office is critical. It plays a really important role, but it's also important that we're honest about what the office can and can't do, and what our role in City Hall is, and not overpromise. So, and I think to get that message across effectively, it's not something that lends itself to a poster or a flyer. It ideally does require me to meet people and let them ask questions, and for me to help them understand what the office is about. Yeah.
So you're focusing on policy and outreach as opposed to spectacle. Wow. Quite novel in America.
Yeah, I mean, I hope it works. I have faith in Oakland voters. I think that we're a smart electorate, and when we have when we have access to good information, we make good decisions. And so I think my job is to give voters access to information about this race.
Absolutely. I
Yeah.
feel like that's often my biggest concern when it comes to voting. I have no problem voting for progressive candidates. I have no problem voting at all. I vote in midterms. I vote every election I can. But the struggle seems to be parsing out some of the trickier details, combing through all of these details.
Mm-hmm,
Um,
mm-hmm.
so, ooh, speaking of details, do you have a position on the recall of the DA, Pamela Price?
Good question. So, and I get asked that quite a bit. And so what I say is, our office and the city attorney, we don't take positions or endorsements on individual candidates. So, and that's actually in the city charter, especially for local elections anyway, is that the city attorney is not really supposed to endorse or oppose other candidates. And we kind of extend that to our other agencies, our counterparts at the county.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't have an opinion on who should be the DA.
Okay.
But that said, I do have concerns about what appears to be a pattern of recalls in the Bay Area, that it seems to have started in San Francisco with Chesa Boudin,
right, yeah,
and their school board, and it's moved its way over here. And there's a lot of evidence that's coming out now that seems to indicate that this is a concerted effort to normalize this process, to make it so that if you have enough money and your candidate doesn't win, the next day after the election, you can begin an effort to force a county or force a city to do that election over again. And I do have concerns with that. I think the recall mechanism was meant to be a tool that voters would be able to use if somebody in office was grossly incompetent or corrupt, like but not it was not meant to be used as a weapon
Right.
when somebody is elected to office and does the things that they said they were going to do, but that some people who didn't vote for them want to try to redo that election. So I do have concerns about recalls generally.
Is there anything that you think you can do in this office on an institutional level to address maybe, obviously, you can't do anything about the recall process, but maybe address issues around money and politics? I mean, Citizens United has obviously been disastrous for this country.
Yeah.
And, is there some way that the city can join with other cities to file a suit, right, to address that? Or is there anything like that?
It's a good question. I I'll be honest. I wouldn't have a lot of faith in the current Supreme Court. I mean, they've only gotten more conservative since
Valid.
Citizens United, right? So
Right.
I don't have a lot of faith in them kind of revisiting that decision, at least not in a way that would be helpful.
Yes.
But I do think there are things that cities can do, and one of the things is public financing for campaigns. I think can help even the playing field. So, um, you know, uh, on the last ballot, um, there was a movement to institute what's called democracy dollars here in Oakland, and it was essentially the next level of public financing for campaigns. And it passed. It was on the ballot, and it passed. And what that will do eventually is instead of the city giving campaigns money directly, it will give vouchers to Oakland registered voters, and those vouchers they can give them to candidates who they want to support, and the candidates can then go and redeem those for cash. So it will allow people who might not otherwise be involved in supporting campaigns, or maybe don't have the means to do so. They don't have the money to spare. It would give them a way to participate and to help fund campaigns that they support. And I think if a program like that, if once it's able to get off the ground, it would even the playing field. Because right now, that unfortunately, in our because of our budget woes in the city council wasn't able to fund that program. So when I announced my candidacy, I was the first citywide candidate to operate under a system where we'd lowered the contribution limits for candidates. So it's been harder for some of us to raise money, but without that democracy dollars program being funded. And so one of the things we need to keep an eye on in this election is independent expenditure committees. That's essentially a PAC. It's the same idea that Citizens United authorized and enabled. We need to be on the lookout for those coming into Oakland politics and trying to essentially buy offices in City Hall.
That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And I think that it's going to be so much more successful for these really shady campaigns to do their work, because folks don't know what's going on the local level a lot of the time. We're focusing on the presidential election, maybe senatorial, or someone running for House, but a lot of times we're not looking at the city attorneys and DAs and stuff like that.
Right. That's right.
So, do you have any other thoughts on dealing with, corporate entities, wealthy people who want to have influence in our local politics here in Oakland, and maybe our local races?
I think Oakland businesses, even large corporations who've decided to headquarter themselves in Oakland, they are also part of Oakland. I think that they have a seat at the table, and their voices and opinions deserve to be heard as well. I mean, I think all of us want Oakland to thrive, both culturally but also economically, and to have jobs and housing and things like that. So there's a place for developers and landlords and business owners and corporations. But I think the key, a few things. One is, I think it should be corporations and landlords and businesses that are in Oakland. Once we start having influence from people, anybody, whether it's wealthy individuals or corporations or landlords from outside of our city, I think that should be a red flag. And then the second thing, even for all of us that are here, I just think people's voices need to be heard equally. I don't think that anybody should have an outsized voice or outsized influence when it comes to local politics.
that was my next question. Is like, yeah, how do we keep that balance? The fact that a developer has so much more say because they have right, like money talks in this country. How does their voice count as much as mine?
Yeah, I think I think the truth right now is that we have to go out of our way a little bit to educate, to keep ourselves educated. If you just consume what's presented to you, you are likely to be misled.
Mm.
And so I think the world we live in right now is one where you have to go a little bit out of your way to find those trusted sources of information that are going to do a lot of that homework for you, because none of us has time to, like, as you were saying earlier, research every candidate in every race at every level that's going to be on the ballot, or every measure, every proposition. So I think what a lot of us do, I do myself, is I find newspapers that I trust. I find other organizations that will do endorsements, or tell me what slate of candidates and measures they're supporting and why, who've done some of that homework for me. But it's important, again, to find ones that you trust and you come to trust over time.
Yes, and maybe that are progressive and have a reputation for being progressive, who want to, push the needle in terms of make. um, Bad paper. Okay. Um, who want to push the needle and make sure that folks are voting in their best interest and not just in the interest of the elites among us, right?
I think that's right. And I would say, the other thing I'd say is, anytime anytime I get the sense that somebody's trying to get me to vote a certain way or move a certain way out of fear, that's a red flag for me, right? I have much more comfort and respect for elected leaders, community leaders, stakeholders who are coming from a place of what they want to do and what they want to change, as opposed to trying to scare me into doing something or tell me what I need to run from. It's always a red flag for me.
That's a big red flag for me. Which, can I do a time check? What time is it?
Yeah, one sec. Doing some B-roll on mine. 5:30.
Okay.
Yeah, we're risky.
Okay. Cool. Um, Now back to your be real. Okay. Um, yeah, that's a big red flag for me. And I am consistently frustrated when talking about the presidential election. And I feel like, I do want to keep this about local politics, but it's on all of our minds, so we might as well talk about it. What are your thoughts? Because I will say this. I am very frustrated with the continued fear tactics, and not just from the right, but from the center, the left, of we have to vote for Harris because she's not Trump, right? Like, if Trump gets elected, then this. If Trump gets elected, then that. And it's all kind of, for me, coming down to fear. Not saying that. I mean, first of all, as a Californian, my vote doesn't matter. It's going to be blue no matter who. But I think that we should be strategic in how we engage with this process, especially on a national level. And I think that there are a lot of people who are wanting to withhold their vote and who want to make noise about the issues that they care about, because right now Harris has platform, no platform. It's except for we're not Trump, and to me that feels like feeding into the scare tactics. And I want to see more. I want to see more.
So, and this is a conversation I enjoy having too. It's really can be an ethical and moral, like, maze to figure out, especially on the national level with the Democratic Party, how to vote sometimes for me. Because I'm torn between, I feel like the Republican Party and conservatives have gone so far afield, so far from, I was talking to somebody else about, like, thinking back to the Mitt Romneys and thinking back, like, wow, they actually, compared to what we're seeing today, right? John McCain's, they actually, like, and back then I thought they were extreme. And what did I know?
Right.
And it's pulling. I feel like it's
it has the potential, if we're not careful, to pull the whole country, including it moves the center.
I think it already has.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think one of my frustrations with the Harris campaign, the Biden campaign, all of these campaigns in the last few years is that to me it feels like I'm voting for Republicans and like incredibly insane Republicans. Like those are my options right now. You know, just listening to. I saw a debate between who was it? It was HW and someone else. I don't remember, but it was a Republican primary debate where they were talking about, you know, immigrants needing pathways to citizenship, and we shouldn't be demonizing them, and we shouldn't be treating them badly, and they should come here and seek asylum
Right.
if they need it. And,
Right.
you know, just reasonable things that a person would say. The Republicans were saying that in the 80s, and now Trump is saying that we need to murder, you know, people coming from Guatemala and using Palestinian as a slur.
Right.
You know, we've descended so far into chaos that, you know, I just feel like I want us to be better as opposed to the worst, you know.
I agree, but the ethical maze that I personally experienced, though, is at the same time there is, and I don't want to resort to fear tactics, but there is a real danger to the Trump administration. And so it's like I think we want to pull the Democratic Party as far, toward liberalism and progressivism as we can. But if we go too far and it costs us an election, it has real implications for people. And I have to kind of remind myself that I'm very privileged. Like, I can afford to live in the city that I have chosen to live in, that I'm comfortable in, and I'm insulated from certain things, right? Like, my family's reproductive rights aren't likely to be affected anytime soon. I don't have family members who would get deported. My life would change all that much. So I have to kind of remind myself at the same time that for some people that there is a real difference between, what some of us look like as potentially a Republican in sheep's clothing and an extreme Republican.
Right.
There can be a serious difference in their lives for that. So it's hard to know where to draw that line, but I do think it's incumbent upon us to pull as far toward liberalism, progressivism, and pull as hard as we can to counterbalance what's happening on the other side.
I agree with that. What do you think of Waltz as the running mate?
I'm just now getting familiar with him. I like the guy. I mean, and there's a reason he's run successfully for governor. He's likable.
Yes.
I'm gonna keep watching him and see what comes out about him. He's been, I have to imagine he's been vetted as thoroughly as anybody can. So I will be surprised if anything terrible comes out.
Yeah. And I mean, I think the worst things are already out there. Like, to me, he is the best choice that she could have made. I was actually surprised. I was like, whoa, 2 W's in the same month from the Democratic Party? What, do they want to win? It's crazy. Having Biden step down and then picking Waltz as running mate, I think is great. Obviously, he's APAC funded. He is, he's called the National Guard on protesters during the 2020 uprisings. He is, done not great things for in terms of the pipeline that was being built there and stuff. Definitely not great, but there's a history of him being a reasonable person who is standing up for people as opposed to corporate interests or whatever, right? He's a teacher. He was a teacher. He's standing up for trans rights. So many important things to me. I think that he's pretty on par with what I would want to see as someone running for higher office. And I think that, like you said, the Overton window has shifted so far right that choosing him as VP, I think, is going in a good direction in terms of nudging it back to the left. I don't think that it's going to go as far as we want. He's, no Bernie Sanders or whatever. But I think that I think he was a good pick, personally.
I think you kind of summed up my take on it too. I think what do they say? The first rule of VP is to do no harm.
Right.
That's kind of what you're looking for. I feel like he fits that bill.
Yes.
And he's generally likable.
Yeah. And in terms of Gaza, obviously, like I said, he's APAC funded. He's got his picture with Netanyahu, but at the same time, he says that the uncommitted voters should be heard because they are exercising their rights. And I think that that's what we should really, how we should be addressing this, in my opinion, is that people who are, civically engaged
Yeah.
should be listened to, like whether or not we're wrong, let's have it out, let's have a conversation, but don't vote shame. Don't, try to browbeat someone into something, because that, to me, it feels like doing exactly what I don't like about Republican
Yeah.
like methodology in terms of voting.
Well, and I agree, and I think that like the people who were voicing, like speaking out and saying that they were reserving their vote, largely based on Biden and his stance on Gaza. I think that I wasn't in the room when he made his decision, but I feel like that had to have moved the needle. But that had to have factored in,
So
right? That factored into his polling numbers. That factored into his decision making. So I think that wasn't the only reason he stepped down, but it played a part. And so it's kind of an example of, like you said, that nobody's vote should be taken for granted.
Right.
Like we should expect our leaders to earn our support. That's what we should
they
expect.
should earn our support. We
Right.
shouldn't get yelled at on Instagram about who we're voting for. You know who I'm talking about. Okay. Back to local politics. Enough of that. How does the city attorney's office feel about the encampment management policy? Do you think that the city has an obligation to comply with that policy, and how should the city address this policy in light of the shifting conditions around homelessness and the grant's past decisions?
Yeah. And so I guess for some of the folks that follow you, when we talk about grants passed, we're talking about a Supreme Court decision that was recently passed down that lifted the restrictions that had existed on the West Coast for dealing with people who are experiencing homelessness. And that the law of the land before the Supreme Court decision was essentially that cities and local agencies could not criminalize the state of being homeless. So you couldn't move somebody along or force them to leave or detain them for trespassing or something like that, or public camping if they had nowhere else to go. And so you had to offer them, have somewhere else available for them to go before you could tell them they can't be on the sidewalk or on the street. And the Supreme Court has overturned that decision. How do I feel about, so the city of Oakland's encampment management policy still is our encampment management policy. So that decision hasn't changed as of today. Anything about the way the city has said that is the law of our land to manage encampments. But I think it's foreseeable that with that decision, there's going to be interest and folks who are going to want to amend that policy. I think the role of the city attorney's office is, I think there's a number of roles we can play. That what we need to avoid, in my personal opinion, is a race to the bottom. I think what we want to avoid is a situation where each city in the Bay Area, for example, is looking at every other city and thinking they're going to crack down on encampments before we do, and then all the house folks are going to move to our city, and we're going to have a huge problem. And then so everybody tries to crack down first. I think that we need to be in close communication with our counterparts in other cities to reassure each other that this is still the Bay Area, and that's not what we value, and that's not how we intend to move. And then I think the city attorney's office also has a role to play in helping identify what are there things in the encampment management policy that maybe we can change, but that are not going to lead to inhumane treatment of our open residents, right? So there are, I think things around. There may be ways that the city council decides to clean up encampments, for example, differently, even if they're not telling people that you can't camp here, right? That kind of thing. So I think I guess what I'm saying is the other thing the city attorney can do is help the city council remember that it's not all or nothing. It's not that we either have to have an encampment management policy that gives people notice and due process and things like that, or have none at all. Let's address it incrementally and see if there are things about the encampment management policy that can change, but that can still protect unhoused people.
And as a person who works at an organization that specializes in this, do you see yourself, do you see your office kind of consulting with organizations that are on the ground? What kind of work can you do with, like, being kind of an intermediary between the city council and?
Yeah, the first thing I would try to do is get stakeholders and community experts directly in touch with the council members, because it's better than me being an intermediary, right? So first thing I would try to do is be more of a bridge builder. Sometimes it can be hard for our office to work directly with community stakeholders and things because, to your question earlier, we are advising the city council and mayor, and we have a certain level of attorney-client privilege and things like that. So I may have advice for them or an analysis for them that I can share with them, but as much as I might want to, couldn't share with you because it would waive it. And if we waive it, then somebody who wants to come in and attack our policy on the back end could use that as a way to try to tear down the policy. So we have to be careful about that. So one of the things I try to do is get folks in touch with the mayor's office, with the city council members, so that they can have that dialogue directly. Then the city council member can come to me and say, hey, they recommended X, Y, and Z. What do you think? How can we do it? What's a legal way to get there? And then I can help them behind the scenes.
Absolutely. Wait one sec.
Yeah.
There's some issue with the
mics.
Mics, I think.
What happened?
I don't know. I just looked at this and it had stopped recording, I believe, at some point. Hopefully we can still hear that from either my phone or the camera.
Looks like there's a 15.
Oh, that's nice.
Let's see if we can hear businesses, but even large races. I think that businesses. Yeah, damn it. Well, hopefully we have some sound on there.
We lost all our sparkling conversation about Kamala.
Please.
Because these mics are so good.
Yeah.
You might have the sound in the other one, but it won't sound nearly as good.
Right, yeah. Okay, well, I didn't realize that about this program, so that sucks.
Are you able to do a new 15-minute file?
Yeah. Let's see. Save that.
Well, learning for next time.
Next time.
Same. I mean, yeah. So this is helpful to me too, because I even just interviewing clients and stuff is like
It's a good practice.
it is.
Yeah, and I don't think that stuff will be wasted. It just won't sound quite as good.
Yeah. I'm glad I brought the extra mic. Okay. I'll start another one, and it's 5:47. Still doing pretty good.
Yeah, I'm fine. I don't need to it's at 6:45 and I don't have to go get ready or so.
Yeah, easy peasy. Okay. I don't think we have more than 15 minutes left of questions and chatting to do, but
Knowing that, we'll keep an eye on it.
yeah,
Let you know
keep an
if it goes
eye.
up.
Good catch though.
Yeah. Right? Glad you looked at it. All right, we're recording?
Yes.
Okay, let's see. Where were we? We're talking about
Bringing stakeholders into the legislative process.
Gotcha. Yeah. Do you have any additional thoughts around that, or?
No.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that's fine. We can move on. Let's see. Okay. So, going back to kind of the issue around homelessness, is there anything the city attorney can do in terms of rent prices or anything like that like you said, you all can take to task like shady landlords and stuff. Like, what can you do to help I'm thinking in terms of prevention of
Yeah.
homelessness and addressing some of the poverty issues.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. So there's a number of things we can do to kind of promote, like when I think about some of the causes, I think tenant protection and I think affordable housing.
Right.
So and yeah, there's we play a number of roles in those arenas. So first and foremost, like when it comes to tenant protection, the tenant protection laws that are on our books, those all come through our office. So we have a team in the office that specializes in that. We have folks who come from a lot of different backgrounds, but most of them actually come from a tenant protection background before they join the office. So when our council members want to amend or update our tenant protection laws, whether it's something to do with an eviction moratorium for COVID or any of those things, we're the ones that are helping them figure out how to do it, and again, do it in a way that will withstand anybody who wants to attack it or to invalidate it. We also advise the city's rent adjustment program. So the staff that runs that program to make sure and tries to ensure that landlords are registering their units and that we're tracking rent increases and that tenants know what their rights are vis-a-vis the city and know where to make inquiries and get information. We advise that staff, we advise that board, and then we can also bring actions against landlords if they are, and we do it more. It's more at a systemic level. So if somebody has an apartment building where they are systematically trying to constructively evict tenants and those types of things, like they're engaged in a pattern and practice, we can go after them. And when it comes to affordable housing, we also have a role to play. So like one of the things I'm working on now is making sure we get across the finish line with this deal to put the Coliseum complex into the hands of developers. But that's going to be the first milestone, because once that goes through, the next part of that discussion is going to be what gets developed there.
Right.
And so there's going to be a lot of talk about community benefits, anything from green space to local jobs to all sorts of things, but also how much affordable housing are you going to build there, in where on the spectrum from deeply affordable to affordable, and in what percentages. Those are all things that our office is at the table for when those negotiations are taking place and where we're advising behind the scenes. And then we also have a lot to do with the city's just built planning code more generally, right? So we have to periodically update the city's general plan, and we have to update the plans for specific areas of the city. And part of that planning is for the city to say, as this gets developed, these are the types of industries we want to see here, and these are the levels of housing we want to see built here. Okay. And so as those areas get developed, those planning codes kind of inform and instruct how much housing is going to get built. So, and we're right at the table for those that we're thought partners in that process as well. Yeah,
that makes a lot of sense. And I will say, since I have you, a lot of the issues that I'm seeing in terms of affordable housing is that there are developments in places that are food deserts. So that's a big concern for me, just personally, is that I'm housing people who have been on the streets for 15, 20 years sometimes, like even, people who grew up in Oakland who are elderly and they're disabled, and they get put into their first apartment in years, if ever, and there's just no food around them. There's just no, and they're on, EBT SNAP, they're maybe collecting a disability check if they're one of the richer ones, right? So they're not, they don't have accessible green space as well, accessible food, accessible just things like basic human needs, I think aren't being met. So I think hopefully your office would be considering those things as well.
I'll tell you a quick story. I was out the other night with one of my colleagues in the office who is in planning. He works with the planning and building department, and he was telling me about this supermarket that was, and I won't name any names or neighborhoods, but a supermarket that was permitted to be built and in a neighborhood, in a nice supermarket, and then some of the neighbors really close by were upset because it was going to bring some traffic and street parking and stuff like that. And he and I were talking about what a kind of privileged problem that is to have, right? This idea that you're going to have this wonderful grocery store too close to your house. And that, in that really what a lot of people are concerned about is not actually having a grocery store anywhere near their house. So yeah, I think the issue of food deserts is something that that is absolutely something that's going to take city planning, and for the city to have an active hand in. It's not a problem that's going to solve itself by the free market.
No,
like we have to incentivize that kind of development where we want it.
Because like the Foonlock buildings, Foonlock East and West, those are built near Brooklyn Basin, and there's no food over there. There might be like a 7-Eleven somewhere over there, but there's a very, very expensive grocery store. And I go to Rolling with the Homos. If you want to go to a roller skating drag show, go to Rolling with the Homos every fourth Sunday, I think, something like that. Check the Instagram. But there's food over there. Technically, it's a cute little grocery store, but it's so expensive, and I don't know how any of my clients who get housed over there eat. Really, I'm sure they have to get on a bus and go wherever to try to get some groceries. But it's got to be super untenable for them.
Right. No. Yeah. You need. Yeah. That's a good point. Yeah. You can't be a boutique artisanal. With cheeses and baked goods and stuff like that. Yes. I think that's good to have too. Mm-hmm. I think we should all be exposed and have access to everything. But yeah, you need a grocery store with like fresh produce.
Yes.
And pantry goods and like staples.
Right. Cheap food too. Yeah. Right, absolutely. Right. Okay. I'm so far we've gotten to know you a little bit in terms of your work. Can you tell us a little bit about just who you are as a person? You're a dad, you're a husband.
Yeah. So I'll just tell you where I'm from. I'm from Arizona originally, from Tucson. Grew up, born and raised, and I left there. I went to college at Howard University in DC, and that was life-changing, eye-opening for me, especially coming from Tucson. I love Tucson, but as a Black person of color, I didn't realize how much better life could be when I was just had more diversity around me. How much safer I would feel, and so went from there to Los Angeles, where I practiced for 10 years and met my wife. And then we moved up here. I have 2 kids. I have a daughter who's much older. She's 26, so I had her when I was still in college, and then I have a 13-year-old with my wife. And my daughter. Here's a little bit of good news. Very current events is my daughter went to college out in Atlanta, but I just this week have been able to negotiate and coax her back to the Bay Area. Yay! So she's going to come back and live with us, and I'm hoping to get her to set down roots. And my son, he goes to Oakland School for the Arts, so he's studying theater and
thespian.
Yeah,
love it.
He is enjoying himself, and my wife, a pediatrician, and then you met my little rescue dog. We're not quite sure what he is, but our little dog Kylo. So
aww,
that's us.
So cute. Yay! Oh, beautiful. Okay.
Sun's starting to get halfway on your face.
Oh, okay.
Is that better?
Yeah.
That's better?
Perfect. Thanks for keeping an eye out.
Yes, sir.
I'll probably get a little bit worse and worse. But
yeah.
You're wrapping up pretty soon.
Yeah, we're gonna wrap up a little soon. How we looking?
5 more minutes on the file.
Okay, 5 more minutes.
Always making it file.
Yeah. Okay, so I have a couple things here that are just for fun.
All right.
Just to be kind of stupid. I have a rapid fire segment. So this first one is going to be yes or no questions. And the second one is going to be either or questions.
Okay.
You ready?
I think so.
Okay, let's do it.
All right.
First one is yes or no questions. Do you believe in aliens?
Yes.
Do you like to eat sushi?
Yes.
Do you ever fear that unregulated capitalism causes democratic institutions to deteriorate into oligopoly, imperialism, exasperating support of counter-revolutionary wars, and various forms of economic and cultural exploitation?
Yes.
Nice. Good answer. All right. The next one is either or questions.
Okay.
Kendrick or Drake?
Kendrick.
Peanut butter and jelly or deli sandwiches?
Peanut butter and jelly.
I mean,
I'm 90% vegetarian. I'm mostly vegetarian.
okay,
So yeah, I'll go PBJ.
okay. Posing on a runway or posing with lightsabers?
Posing with lightsabers.
I think we should pose with lightsabers.
Yeah.
Let's do it. Okay. Cool. This would be a good time to stop that, and then we can take some up. The sun is
This is still rolling.
still rolling. Great. Okay, Ryan. This was a lovely conversation. Just to wrap up, are there any questions you want to ask me as a constituent?
I guess I'm trying to get a sense of like how does this election stack up to elections of the past? I think there's a lot going on locally.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot going on nationally. I get the sense you've been voting for a while. Like, how does this compare to other kind of national elections that you've been involved with?
Yeah, I feel like, so I'm pretty new to Oakland. I actually moved here in 2021. So I'm still getting to know the city, getting to know things about the city, but I personally think that people are a little bit more civically engaged, which is really heartening for me, because we need it. We need people to check in. I think that, I was always like into voting, but I just kind of like was doing what felt good or whatever I felt like I should do. But I really did tap in 2016. I door knocked for Bernie Sanders. I was very disappointed at how that year turned out. And on so many ways, right? And I think that it did end up mobilizing a lot of people to move, a lot of people in my generation, a lot of people younger than me to move and get out there and check into what's going on, because I think we saw how our vote does actually matter. So that makes me happy, because that means that more people are actually voting, for one. I think that my biggest goal, the reason why I'm doing this, is because I want people to kind of know what they're voting for. I think that I have seen that voting blue no matter who doesn't work. I think we need to be more intentional, and I think that we are sometimes tricked. The recalls are a great example of this, where people will jump in and into a political process, and they'll do a recall, or they'll run opposite someone because they want them to fail, right? Because that person that's going to get into office might actually do something for the people. So I want to use like whatever little platform I have to signal boost the folks who are just ready to do work, ready to actually be a representative as opposed to someone with a job in public office. So I think that the biggest change that I've seen is just more and more civic engagement. There are a lot of kids, lots of Gen Z folks and younger who are also just like able to vote now. Like they're just now able to vote, and they grew up in the worst of it. Like, as someone who grew up in the 90s, like I still have a memory of when the world was like not what it is, and like I remember when there was hope for the future, and when at least a sense of hope for the future. Like, obviously things have been bad for a long time, but there was a false sense of security that I had, and there are a lot of kids without that privilege. So I think that folks who are coming of age now, and who grew up without those privileges, have a great perspective, and they're going to start voting. And I just want to just kind of play my part personally to help educate people.
Yeah, well put. Well put. Yeah, because you could be voting for the first time in this election and have been 10 years old when Trump was right. Like that was your political awakening.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's and I share your kind of optimism or observation about. I do think people, especially here in Oakland and in the Bay Area, we are politically engaged. We are paying attention, and I take some optimism in that. So I'm looking for.
Yeah.
hoping for the best. I'm going to work for the best for this election
Yes.
at all levels. And yeah, I appreciate
Yes.
you taking the time to talk to me.
I appreciate you taking
Yeah.
the time to talk to me. I know that you're busy and you got things to do, but we did this thing. Thank you so much for watching. I don't know, what do they say on the internet? Like, follow, subscribe, ring the bell, whatever. Just vote, but vote progressive. Don't just vote for anybody, okay? Vote for progressives, people who care, people who are going to do the work and do it well. I think this will be my formal endorsement of Ryan Richardson. Please vote for him.
Thank you.
And yeah, thank you for watching. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Great. Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Let's do some fun stuff. Cool. Okay. I'm
Great.